Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if you have a secret talent for understanding music's emotions, or if some people are just born better at it? Well, today we're diving into a fascinating study that developed a new way to measure this exact ability. This paper is all about creating a brand new test called SMART, which stands for Short Musical Affect Recognition Test. Think of it as a superhero scanner for how well you can guess the emotions hiding in instrumental music. The researchers noticed that while lots of people are interested in music and emotions, there weren't great tools to actually measure how good someone is at recognizing these emotions in music. Existing tests often used very simple pieces of music, which didn't feel very much like the real music we hear every day. So their big idea was to build a test that uses natural music, like film scores, and uses a clever computer system to adapt the difficulty for each person. This way, the test can be both quick and really good at figuring out just how skilled someone is, from beginners to experts. They tested hundreds of people and found their new test worked really well. Before we get to the music part, it's important to know why recognizing emotions is so crucial. We do it all the time without even thinking about it. Our ability to get along with others, to understand what they're feeling, is a big part of life. We pick up on emotions from faces, voices, and body language. Scientists have developed tests for this, but they often focus on just one thing, like pictures of faces. Real life is messier and more complex, with emotions showing up in many ways at once. This new study wanted to bring that same careful testing to the world of music. Imagine if you could test someone's ability to recognize sadness in a melody or happiness in a symphony, just like you can test their ability to recognize a smile or a frown. Now, let's talk about how they build this test. They use some pretty cool scientific tools called item response theory, or ERT, and computerized adaptive testing, or CAT. Don't worry, we'll break it down. Think of ERT like this. Instead of just counting how many answers you get right on a test, ERT looks at which questions you get right and wrong, and how those questions are designed. Some are easy, some are hard. It's like a more precise way to measure your skill. CAT is like having a super smart quizmaster. Instead of everyone answering the same set of questions, the computer picks the next question based on how you're doing. If you're acing the easy ones, it gives you a harder one. If you're struggling, it might offer a slightly easier one. This makes the test much shorter and more accurate for everyone. Why do people listen to music? A big reason is for the feelings it gives us. Music can make us happy, sad, excited, or calm. But measuring how well people can identify these specific emotions in music has been tricky. While we have theories about how music expresses emotion, like sad music often being slow and in a minor key, actually testing someone's ability to pick out those emotions has been hard. The article mentions an existing test called the Musical Emotion Discrimination Task, or MET. This test was a good start, but it had some limitations. It used very simple music, usually with just one instrument playing a melody. Real music is much richer, with many instruments, harmonies, and rhythms all working together to create a feeling. Also, MainDT asks people to compare two versions of a melody, which is different from most emotion recognition tests, where you just choose from a list. This comparison method could make the test harder and longer, and importantly, some emotions were really overrepresented in MET, like happiness, while others were barely there, which isn't ideal for a fair test. So the researchers had two main goals. First, create a new adaptive test using natural everyday music. Second, check if this test is accurate, reliable, and actually measures what it is supposed to. Study 1 was all about building the foundation for this new test. They wanted to create a huge collection of music snippets, figure out how difficult each one was to understand emotionally, and make sure the test would work for different kinds of people. They chose music from a set of film music called the Film Music Stimulus Set, or FMS. Why film music? Because it is designed to create feelings. It is familiar to many people, and importantly, it is more natural and complex than simple melodies performed on one instrument. It has all the layers and richness of real music. They gathered data from over 200 people from Finland and Spain. This helps ensure their findings aren't just specific to one culture. They took those film music pieces and turned them into a big list of questions. For each music clip, they'd present it and ask people to choose between two emotions, like anger or fear, or happiness or sadness. They used past ratings from thousands of people to figure out which emotion was the correct answer for each clip and how easy or hard it was to tell them apart. Using the IRT model we talked about, they estimated how difficult each musical excerpt was for people to identify the emotion. They also looked at how well their computer model could predict people's answers. This study found that their collection of music clips covered a good range of difficulty. Some emotion pairs were harder to distinguish, like anger and fear, while others were easier, like fear and happiness. They also found that their computer model was really good at predicting how people would answer based on the item difficulty and the person's ability. The system was sensitive across a wide range of abilities, meaning it could tell the difference between people who were pretty good at recognizing emotions in music and those who were not so good. They also discovered that things like where people were from, their age, or their gender didn't seem to significantly change how well they performed on this emotional music test. Study 1 basically created the building blocks for their new SMART test. They had a large bank of music clips, each with a known emotional difficulty. This means they could now build a smart adaptive test that could give a personalized challenge to anyone who took it. They found that most emotion pairs had similar levels of difficulty, which is great for a fair test, though some pairs that are close in feeling, like anger and fear, or sadness and tenderness, were a bit trickier. This is different from the older MET test, where some emotions were very hard to interpret in the music. And the researchers suggest this might be because the film music they used allowed for richer emotional expression. Now that they had the building blocks, study 2 was about putting it all together. They wanted to create the actual adaptive test, see how well it worked in real time, and check if it measured the right things. They built the test using a tool called JSP Psych. The music clips were about 10 seconds long, which is enough time to catch the emotion. When each clip finished, participants would see 2 emotions, like happy or sad, and choose which one the music expressed most. They even used emojis to help make the emotions clearer, which is a nice touch for accessibility. The test was designed to have a balanced number of questions for each emotion. Before testing real people, they ran a ton of computer simulations. They made virtual participants with different skill levels and had the computer pick questions for them, just like the real test would. These simulations showed that their adaptive system was really accurate. They found that even with just 20 questions, the test could estimate someone's ability almost perfectly. This means the test doesn't need to be super long to be effective, so they settled on a 20 trial test, which they officially named SMART, and importantly, it only takes about 5 minutes to complete. They then recruited about 200 people online to take the SMART test. They aim for a good mix of people, including a gender balance. After taking SMART, participants also completed other tests. They looked at general musical abilities, how much musical training people had, and other emotion recognition skills, like recognizing emotions from voices and faces. They also checked for something called alexithymia, which is a difficulty in identifying and describing one's own emotions. The results from the real people were great. The SMART scores showed a nice spread, meaning the test could differentiate between people with different abilities. There were no ceiling effects, where everyone gets nearly perfect scores, or floor effects, where most people get very low scores. This means the test is good for a wide range of skill levels. Reliability, which is basically how consistent the test is, was also good, even with around 15 questions, and very good with the full 20. Now for the really interesting part, how does SMART compare to other skills? The study found that SMART scores had a moderate positive connection with recognizing emotions in voices. This makes sense because both music and speech use similar sound cues to express feelings. It also had a small positive link with general musical abilities, which is also expected. Interestingly, it had a very small connection with recognizing emotions from faces, and surprisingly no real connection with how much formal musical training people had. It also had a small negative link with the part of alexithymia called externally oriented thinking, which means people who focus more on external things rather than their own feelings struggled a bit more with music emotions. The researchers concluded that SMART is a solid and efficient tool for measuring musical emotion recognition. It's quick, it's reliable, and it doesn't suffer from the problem of everyone getting the same score. They observed that people who were good at recognizing emotions in voices were also generally pretty good at music emotions, which supports the idea that there are shared skills involved. They also noted that their test uses richer, more natural music than previous tests, which gives a more realistic measure of this ability. The lack of a strong link to musical training was interesting, and they suggest it might be because their music examples are more about listening and interpreting emotions, rather than the technical skills learned in formal training. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? These researchers have given us a fantastic new tool, Smart, to measure how well people can understand emotions in instrumental music. It's short, it's adaptive, and it uses realistic music, which is a big step up from older methods. It can be used to compare people across different skill levels and even across different cultures, since the music is broadly familiar and the emojis are universal. One of the biggest advantages of Smart is its use of naturalistic film music. This means it is capturing emotions in a way that is much closer to how we actually experience music in our lives. With all its complex layers, this is different from tests that use very simple, single-instrument melodies. The adaptive design also means it is super efficient, saving time for both the researcher and the participant, which is great for keeping everyone engaged. Of course, no study is perfect. The researchers point out that Smart uses a forced choice format, meaning people have to pick from a preset list of emotions. This can't capture the full nuanced range of feelings someone might have when listening to music. They also used 5 basic emotions, which is a common approach in this field, but again, music can evoke so much more. They acknowledged that the music is mostly Western film music, and while their results showed some cross-cultural consistency, more testing with diverse populations would be beneficial to confirm how well it works everywhere. But overall, this is a huge win for the field. Smart is a robust, open-access tool that opens up new possibilities for studying how we understand emotions through music. It is sensitive to a wide range of abilities and can help researchers figure out if someone has a natural knack for this, or if it is a skill that can be developed. The fact that all the materials are available online means more researchers can use it, leading to more consistent and comparable studies in the future. It's a really exciting development for anyone interested in the connection between music, mind, and emotion. So, what do I think about this? I think it is brilliant that they've created a test that uses such rich, naturalistic music. This feels much more relevant to how we consume music daily. The adaptive testing is also a game changer for efficiency. My main thought is about the limitations of discrete emotions. While practical for testing, music often evokes complex feelings that don't fit neatly into boxes like happy or sad. Future research could explore how Smart performs with more complex emotional labels or even in more open-ended formats. And the lack of correlation with musical training is fascinating. It suggests that simply playing an instrument a lot doesn't automatically make you better at interpreting emotional expression in music. It might be more about focused listening and a nuanced understanding of expressive cues, which Smart seems to tap into effectively. This test could be super useful for understanding differences in how people process art, and it could even help in therapies that use music. What do you think? Do you consider yourself good at guessing emotions in music? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab for more science explained, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.